Welcome, everybody. Um, Great to meet you. I'm Kiera, and this is my co-founder, Matt.
Hello.
We are the owners of CircleView. CircleView helps manufacturing managers improve team efficiency and communications without needing to be on site. If you guys want to know more about us, you can definitely DM us. We'd be glad to chat with you about what we're doing. But we are not here to talk about us. We are here to talk about Lisa.
Hi.
Lisa owns Confident Costing. Am I saying it right?
You're saying it right.
Yeah, and she's doing some cool things. We want to basically learn about what she's doing and how her remote experience is affecting her, what things she's doing, and yeah. That being said, let's hop right into it. Lisa, tell us about you.
Oh, thanks, Kiera. Well, the simple stuff first. I'm a Canadian Brit. I'm currently located in the UK, and I spent 14 years working in corporate manufacturing. I went right from the lowest of the low. I was the minimum wage, not even the line worker who actually has some responsibility for getting the product out the door and the company is reliant on. I was the purchasing systems administrator. So all I did was make sure that the bombs were correct. Now, I agree that does have some key elements to making your manufacturing organization grow and prosper, but believe me, it was the dregs of a very old system that I was working with. So
Mm.
I went from that all the way through to senior manager in my last organization, working in costing for a global automotive tier one supplier. So I was the senior costing manager on a site that turned over about 150 million euros a year.
Mm.
And I was also the most senior costing person in Western Europe. So any of the processes that we developed in the UK got fed out through Western Europe.
Wow.
And then just to add a bit of extra stress, I worked on an SAP implementation for logistics in Western Europe
Ah,
because finance and logistics are so close together. So manufacturing is, and I absolutely adore manufacturing. So it's great. But there was a bit of remote
Yeah.
working involved in that SAP implementation that I have to say gave me a taste for it, but also highlighted a number of the real challenges that remote organizations face, particularly around things like workload and attempting to work across multiple time zones. That one's always fun.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a few questions, but before we hop into that, can you explain costing? Because every time you say it, I'm like, costing. But I feel like I don't fully understand. So I'd love for you.
Sure. So what I do, or what I did for my last company and what I do now with confident costing, is we look at the full cost of a particular product. And we're not talking about just how much material goes into it or the cost of the direct labor that actually makes the product. We're looking at things like how much of your rent should you be applying to this one particular product that you're making? How much of your logistics costs? What about import side duties? Uh, how much of your forklift driver's effort is going into this one particular part? And we split it down, depending on the business, to very, very granular detail. But the thing about costing is it's a mix between an art and a science. So you could say to an organization that you need to know everything down to the last penny, but it might not be completely appropriate for them.
Mm.
So you then get to the skill of being able to balance how much detail is actually going to give them value. And if you go too far, so you could go too far and end up actually costing them more. So it takes more
Oh,
time, effort, and thus cost. You might have to hire a fleet of accountants to do it to figure out that level of detail, and it's just not worth it for them. So with confident costing, I actually teach organizations how to do it for themselves so they don't end up having to contract someone like me or have me come in as a consultant to do one project. Instead, I'll teach them through that one project, and then they can continue applying it in the future.
I love that.
Or if they're a bigger organization and they already have cost accountants in, one of the things I've really worked on is streamlining the process. So you get the full team working together and you don't lose your accountants because they're pulling their hair out going, well, Joe said this and Bob said this and Janine said this and it all doesn't fit. And that comes from experience. I've been sitting at my desk at 9:30 at night going, who on earth do I ring to find out which assumption they've actually used? Let's do tomorrow.
No, it's really fascinating. I got to say, I'm more used to a costing scenario where you have labor, materials, and then just this fixed overhead cost, and it's kind of taken as granted as, oh, well, that's just the overhead cost, and there's nothing we can do about it. So that's really, I'd love to dig into more of that sometime, talking more details about how you get into all of those different costs and how you can affect those. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Anyway, yeah.
Let's do it. We'll make a date and talk about them in great
Sure.
detail that would bore everybody else listening. So we'll just do it together.
Yeah.
It wouldn't bore me. I feel like we should partner on some things, but we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So tell us how that. So obviously we all began working remote because of COVID. So tell us, how did you end up working remote? What was your transition kind of like? Uh, what happened with social distancing?
It was a really incredibly funny time for me because actually the pandemic really started kicking in the UK around the third week of March 2020. And I'd actually handed in my notice on my corporate job on the 28th of February.
Wow.
But my boss had said, look, all this stuff is kicking off. We can't cope with you doing a 3-month notice period. We'd really like you to extend for 6. So I agreed, but we had a bit of negotiation. So I worked June, July, and August as a descending part-time. So I already knew from the 1st of March when my resignation was accepted that I was going to be building this remote business because I set up Confident Costing to be something that I could do from anywhere, specifically because half my family's in Canada, half of it's here, and I quite like to see my nieces a little bit more, being able to work from wherever I happen to be. So I'd planned that I was going to start working remotely anyway. And then this all kicked off. And because the company I was working for was in the automotive sector and pretty well all manufacturing, except for essential manufacturing services, shut down in the UK for almost 3 months, I think. And I was furloughed for, I think it was from round about the last week of March to almost the end of April. I think I came back in and did the April month end. But it was dreadful. The whole furloughed thing, it was a shock. And the only thing that actually got me through it was the fact that I was working on speccing this remote business. And it gave me the time and the headspace to figure out how I was actually going to manage talking to people, what systems I wanted to put in place, and even just in terms of IT infrastructure. It let me get my limited company was set up during that time as well. But the headspace of not having to transition from being in the plant to working for the plant from home in one fell swoop, that was a godsend for me. I don't think I could have done it as well as I did. I set up an office and sorted all of that side out and learned a lot for how I was actually going to set up Confident Costing, because we didn't actually really go live until August. By that time, I was back working from the plant, but working from home. So I had my screen set up, I had my space set up to do it. And I got in the habit of like every hour get up and do something rather than just sitting hunched over like a snail on my computer.
Wow.
But my previous experience of working remotely was actually doing a lot of project work. and I hated it. I've worked from a ferry going from Vancouver to Nanaimo on the west coast of Canada. I've worked from a hotel room in India. I've worked from a hotel room I've worked from a lot of hotel rooms. I've worked from the Detroit airport. And it was just, if you don't have that, personally, I find if I don't have that little bit of structure of my stuff around me, so I can I can reach the keyboard without it tweaking my back, or I'm not sitting my laptop on my lap, those little things make all the difference.
Yeah.
And also that if you can align yourself nicely planning through the time zones of the people you're working with. I mean, there were days in India where I was getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning to do a call with someone in the US, then working all day in India, and then getting up, doing a call with the UK at 11 or 12 o'clock at night. So just being able to structure those into different days has been amazing.
How did you structure it? What did you, was there just times that you just told people, hey, nope, we can't meet?
Yeah. I set out my calendar now. I book pretty well everything through Schedule Once. So I've got an expanded calendar because I work across time zones, but I won't do a meeting earlier than 7 o'clock in the morning, my time, and I won't do a meeting later than 9 o'clock at night, except once. I did a midnight meeting once.
Was it horrible?
I think it lasted till 2 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
I was at the end going, I need a coffee. I need a coffee. Well, if I have a coffee, I'm not going to sleep. But I need a coffee.
Wow. Crazy.
So,
Ma-
so do you think? Well, let's talk about. So we're still in this kind of working from home environment. Um, do you prefer working from home? What do you think? What do you think things are going to look like for you in the next year?
Well, I had a moment, and I was talking to Kiara about this a week or so ago, and I hit a wall. But it's not the working from home that caused the problem. It was the fact that we were still in lockdown. So I was getting up and walking to my computer, working all day, and then getting up and walking to bed. And there was no incentive to leave the house. You
Mhm.
couldn't go out and meet your friends. You couldn't go to the gym. You couldn't structure activities that split your day up. And that, I think, just it did me in. I got to the point where I could make a 5 minute task take 11 hours. It was terrible.
Yeah.
There was no structure left. So I actually had to go out and get myself an office. So I've got an office for 4 months. Ironically, at the moment, I can't use it because they've had an IT failure. So there's no
Oh.
IT on site until Wednesday. Conveniently, they haven't charged me for it for this month. So but that just let me get that bit of structure back into my day. So then I can start weaning myself back off it into the good headspace that I had when I was working from a specific setup in a specific room and then getting up, going to the gym in the morning, coming back, doing some work, going out, going to see a friend, have a drink, go roller skating, go running, do something, and just get those bookmarks at the end of the day, beginning and end of the day.
Hmm.
Ironically, I was reading a news article yesterday morning, and one of the challenger banks in the UK called Revolut, I'm not sure whether they exist in North America or not yet, but certainly in the UK and Europe. And they're suggesting that what they're going to do going forward is give their employees not only the option of working from home or from the office in their particular country where they're working, but also give them up to 2 months to work from anywhere in the world where they're
Very
traveling
cool.
or whatever, which I thought was a fantastic way of just dealing with everybody getting used to having that kind of flexibility. And
Yeah.
then you have a choice of whether you use it or not.
Yeah. I
That's
really
true.
think. Sorry.
No,
I
go for
really
it.
think the best in class type companies that are looking to retain the top talent, attract and retain, they're going to have to offer those type of incentives for their employees. because we've shown now that we can do remote work, in some form, right? So anyway.
Yeah. And the biggest gripe I had with classical working, let's call it classical working anyway for this purpose, before, was that I could work for a company that would expect me to travel, be able to manage my job in one location whilst working on a project somewhere else. So
Yep.
obviously they expect me to be able to work remotely to do this, but remote working was not allowed. So if I wanted to work from home on a Friday because, I don't know, the plumber was coming to service my bathroom, nope, that's against the guidelines. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
But hopefully that won't come back.
Yeah, it's a really cool advantage now. I honestly, I think once you structure it, like you were saying, the issues that you run into, you can actually be more productive while working from home because you're not worried about what's happening at home while you're working. You, you're, you know,
And you can do things like get your laundry done and not eat up a bit of your weekend because it takes, what, 5 minutes to move the clothes from the washer to the tumble dryer. That's a smoke
yeah,
break, right? And if you don't smoke,
Yep.
you've got to take advantage of the smoke breaks.
Yeah.
yeah. The smoke breaks.
My office in corporate overlooked the smoking area. And so all of us that didn't smoke would be there going, what are they doing?
Yeah.
What are they doing?
That
It
was
looks really
that was
exciting, but I don't
one
want
of
to be able to smoke.
the first plant that I worked at. I would sometimes go to the shift meeting, the beginning of the shift, and everyone would meet in the control room and they'd all go over their stuff, and then the first thing that happened would be half everybody goes outside for a smoke break. It was just, then it
So
was like,
when
yeah,
you're
maybe I should
costing
start smoking.
something like that, So when you're
Yeah.
costing something like that, I mean, one of the things we always used to do is you look at how long you're paying people for. So in the UK, you tend to pay them for an 8-hour shift and you run, well, if you're doing 24/5, you run 8-hour shifts. But then you look at how much of that 8 hours they actually work. So if you're paying someone, I don't know, $20 an hour, including all the costs of having them. So if you pay them a pension, if you have to contribute part of their social insurance, national insurance, as it's called here, I can't remember what it's called in Canada. Been too long. So you add all of that up into the per hourly rate, and then you go, ooh, so of the 8 hours, how many hours do they actually work? Well, here they get a half an hour lunch, which we paid them. And then they had two 15-minute breaks. So you take that off. And okay, so we're at 7 hours now. And then you look at, well, of those 7 hours, how much of they spending sweeping the floor, walking slowly back from the toilet, all of this. And then you work that into, and your per hourly rate is actually a lot higher than you anticipate.
Yeah, it's a lot of the work that I do right now, Lisa, in manufacturing is automating the flow of data. So gathering the information when the machine is actually running, and so that kind of strikes a chord with me because you look when the operator said, "Oh, we ran for 6 hours today," and then you can see how much the machine was actually running. It was more like 2 hours, right? Because there's all these other things. That's not that they're necessarily that they're slacking off or whatever, but it's just there's all these other associated tasks that go along with the manufacturing with the order.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Or you then find that someone's been complaining that something has gone down and it hasn't been fixed yet. And then you have exactly the right tool to poke your maintenance department with to go, come on, guys, you've
Yep.
made the piece part price this much more expensive because the machine's not working.
Right.
So I'm going to put you on the spot, Lisa, because there's this statistic that's kind of floating around that working from home actually costs less. So it's kind of like you cut out the amount of time it takes for them to drive to the office and those kind of things. I've read a few articles about it. What do you think?
Well, my electric bill has gone up since I've been working from home quite a lot. And well, I didn't drive to the office. I live about 7 miles from my old office and I would run, walk or cycle. So I think in terms of calorific food consumption versus output, I've probably consumed about the same amount of food and not had the output. So from that energy perspective, there's probably a bit of saving, as it were, on my tummy area. But I think it probably is very dependent on the individual. And if you're having a very long commute, definitely. But equally, there's some value in the commute. I mean, that was one of the bits I really missed out of my day. So I've chosen a slightly shorter commute to my new office. But it just gives me the headspace of getting there. So it is a defined beginning and a defined end to the day. And I find actually I'm a lot more efficient when I get in, and I'm much more creative because it gives your subconscious time to mull over all of the other things while your body's focused on doing something else. So I wonder if it probably nets out to about the same in terms of cost of working from home, really, when you add everybody up. But I wonder if there's been a deficit in things like creativity, innovative ideas, and well, I suspect there probably has, just for the lack of interpersonal communication of the stop by somebody's desk and rearrange their post-its while they're not looking type collaboration. But I wonder if the lack of bringing on or bringing into the day and leaving the day behind has also had an effect on that.
So as an employer of, quite a few people, now having half of their staff working from home or a quarter of their staff working from home, do you think for them they're actually saving money? I mean, in thinking about how you're also all of the things that you just said, do you think? What do you think? I don't know.
Well, I think if you talk about things like consumables, so if they're supplying paper and pens, the cost of those is going to have reduced considerably because no one's going to ask them to post you a pen. You're just going to go get one, aren't you? Although the ability to borrow pens from posh hotels doesn't exist anymore at the moment, which is where my pen supply comes from, pretty well all branded from some hotel name or another. But also things like their electric spend, whatever form of heating they use, consumables right down to, despite all the cleaning, I mean, they won't be going through nearly as much cleaning equipment, soaps, they dishwash dishes, all of those kinds of things. And then organizations that have things like staff canteens. I mean, the chances are pretty good they've either scaled them way back or even gotten rid of them completely. So those kinds of expenses have probably reduced quite considerably. Variable, yeah, I've already mentioned electric. In the UK, gas, heating as well. And water. We pay through the nose for water. It's incredibly expensive here. Water and
Crazy.
sewer,
That stuff
terrible
should be
bill.
free. Crazy. Yeah.
So from that perspective, you've also got organizations now that, well, they're considering potentially not bringing their full workforce back permanently. They're looking at things like reducing office space or maybe letting out surplus space for different things. Probably not as much of a big deal for most manufacturers because most manufacturers, certainly here, are footprint constrained on the manufacturing side, not necessarily on the office side. So I mean, the last plant I worked in, they cannot physically put in another assembly line. I mean, they're looking at having to take goods in warehousing out and kit in just so they've got more production line space. But then where do you kit in from if you don't have... We're land poor here, whereas in most of North America, or certainly most of industrial North America, that's not such a big constraint.
I love the way you think. Very cool. Okay, I got off from our questions, but let me get back to it. So okay, post COVID, we're already talking about what do you think it'll look like, and kind of talk. Oh, we haven't talked about this. So preferences. So I know that you contract for a couple companies, I think multiple companies, and then also you have confident costing, which you're the boss, so you can prefer whatever you like. But do you think that they prefer, your employer prefers that you work from home? Do they like it that you work from home, or would they prefer for you to be right under their nose?
Well, I consult for a couple of companies. It's not strictly contracting. There's been a rule change here. There's been a law change. Contracting it has various legal implications in terms of effectively they call it off books working. So you
Oh,
have to get treated as an employee. So actually, I'm a consultant for a couple of companies. That's just definitions, right?
right.
Contract is very specifically written so that I'm a consultant for a couple of organizations. One of them is based abroad, so there's absolutely no chance of me physically working for them unless they want to pay me vast amounts more money and help me relocate there for a period of time. One of them is very
Yes.
local to me here, and I do bits and pieces from their site, usually for physical meetings. But other than that, um, they don't really mind because I'm in that perspective, I'm effectively my own boss as well because I hit their targets and that's what they have me for. I'm working on a very specific project which is related to the UK leaving the EU. It's an absolutely epic disaster in
Is
terms
it?
of dealing with the import export side because we've got for the first time ever a preferential trade agreement which is kind of like your NAFTA agreement. But no one in Europe, other than very small amounts, has ever had to deal with a preferential trade agreement. It's like there's one with Korea, but the trade with South Korea is small. There's one with Japan, but again, the trade is small. And most, certainly UK companies that I'm aware of, haven't exported really to Korea or Japan, maybe one or two items. So having to deal with all of the compliance around it is a real significant workload, administrative and compliance workload that they didn't anticipate. The
Mm.
software doesn't exist, the infrastructure doesn't necessarily exist, and the knowledge in the market doesn't really exist. So I go into this organization and they're just, we need this, go. So they don't care really where I work from. It's a very long way of answering that question. They don't care where I work from as long as I deliver the results.
Hmm.
So I get the choice. If it suits me, I can work from their facility or I can work from here. So it's just if I have to meet with specific people, I'll go there. If I don't, then it's easier for me to work from either my office or from home.
Hmm. Matt, you got a
Okay.
question?
Yeah, well, I think we kind of covered most of our topics, but maybe we could wrap it up with this one. Um, so there are some people, well, I know some people who have only worked remote, right? They're new to the job force, or they're new to their specific job in this COVID time. So there's things like they haven't physically met their manager, stuff like that. Do you have any specific advice for those people, or just people in general from working from home? I know you kind of touched on, bookending the day, but anything else that you can think of that you would recommend?
That's an interesting question because I think that's going to be very person specific. I mean, I
Yeah.
can see people who are very new to the workforce having perhaps come out of school. So, what they call high school here is absolutely nothing like high school in North America, by the way. High school here is like middle school. So, so people coming out of college here, which would be the same as people coming out of high school, in, just to confuse everything, in North America, that have never really worked in a particularly office-based environment, I would say. I mean, from the physical manufacturing perspective or the production engineering perspective or any of the operational support, I would imagine the majority of them would have in this time have had at least some time on site already.
Yeah.
But the office support side, I can see people struggling with the fact that it's kind of like school, but it's nothing like school at all. I mean, it kind of feels like school when you go in, but then there's no one going to herd you around. There's no one going to watch over you every given time. You still have to deliver exactly what you were delivering from home, but there's all these other new distractions coming in around you. the biggest thing I found, and it's bizarre, but every time I work on a different site, I get a headache because I never drink enough water. I
Oh,
don't know why. I just get really
makes
excited
sense.
about being there. And then it all of a sudden it's 3 o'clock and I've had one coffee all day and I'm going like I
Yeah.
haven't eaten lunch and I haven't had water. So it's just be aware of yourself, be aware of things like, have you had enough water? Have you remembered to eat? And also that you can be a big personality that overwhelms an office quite easily. I mean, I sit here bouncing around all sorts, but I was in my old office yesterday talking to some specific people and realized I was there talking out loud. And I was talking to my computer screen and I was trying to have a conversation with somebody else and all this stuff. Having been kind of isolated in my own little bubble of working from home, it took a few moments, or probably a couple of hours actually, they'll tell you, for my brain to click back into the fact that there are actually people trying to work around me. And I needed to be more conscious of how big I was making myself, just in terms of noise, in terms of occupying space, in that kind of thing. If you've never had to do that, I can see that being a big challenge. And the people who are particularly on the two ends of the introvert extrovert scale will probably be the ones that struggle with it the most, because the introverts are going to want to hide under their desks and the extroverts are going to want to take up all of the space, and the introvert under the desk is not going to say, oi, you're too loud, tone it down. And the extrovert is not even going to notice the person under the desk.
Yeah. That's a good point. You kind of miss a lot of that interpersonal relationships and like just understanding everyone's personality, right? Just the little quirks that they have when you're not in the same office as them every day. So yeah, it's a good one to catch.
It's also, though, important not to forget the nice bits of it. It's nice to be able to go to someone you've never actually physically met and discover the 4 or 5 little quirks that makes them a particularly really interesting human being and someone that you actually like talking to. And that's one of the really nice things about being able to go back into an office is just either remembering that or learning that about your colleagues. And
Yeah.
that, I don't know, someone likes jam donuts, and if you really want to make their day, you buy them a jam donut on your way into work and leave it on their desk.
So how now working from home, and not necessarily, well, there's flexi schedules kind of going on, and people are working in office part of the week, at home part of the week. But for people who don't have that interaction, how do how do you kind of make up for it? What can you do that would continue to build those relationships even though you're at a distance?
I think that one's hard because people are, I suspect, going to be less and less inclined to do things. Sorry, I thought I'd turn that off. To do things like social Zoom stuff now. I mean, the weather's getting better. It's been a long year of doing it. And
Yeah.
I was randomly having a chat with one of my best friends earlier today, and she said, like, you just get messages and you don't even necessarily want to respond to them. It's the electronic media is becoming harder and harder and harder to deal with. I
Mm.
think if you have the option of going in and physically meeting at least some of your colleagues at certain points, then it's definitely worth doing. Even if it's just you go in and you may see them one day a month or something. The people I suspect who are going to find it hardest might be the ones who are physically very separated from their organization, because where normally those types of organizations will have once or twice a year meetups in a central location just to develop those team dynamics. Certainly the certain types of them will. They won't, I suspect, be allowed to do that again for probably another year if you look at the way the vaccine rollout is going. So I think those ones are going to be particularly, they're going to have a particularly insightful way of creating that connection without being able to physically meet.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that is. I can't think of anything personally that would work particularly well for me, but I've lived by myself through this whole thing. So, I mean, I got to a point where all I wanted to do was have a hug. So,
Air hugs for Lisa.
yeah. Air hugs and elbow bumps. Yeah. Fortunately, it's not the case. Well, I love a hug, but fortunately, it's not the case anymore. I mean, I do still live by myself, but we're actually free enough. I can see my partner, I can see his mom, and things like that. But having that physical separation, if you don't have, well, it must be terrible if you don't have any form of family or anything else around, and your colleagues are all remote and you can't see anybody. But it just I don't know. Yeah, I don't think currently there isn't an answer to that. Let's hope someone comes up with a good one soon.
I think you actually just made a good suggestion, just making an effort. I mean, even if it's a small effort to see, be in someone's presence, for even a couple times a month is going to be beneficial to you. Uh, yeah, I think that's actually probably the best thing to do, at least right now.
I mean, I've been trying to push more, at least phone calls and video chats rather than text messages and
Good.
chats, those type of things where I have the chance and the opportunity. And I think that does help, just a little bit.
Do you find, and I never anticipated finding this, but do you find you feel quite different between a phone call and a video chat? And I don't know, maybe it's just that I find I almost feel closer to people when I talk to them on the phone than I do when I do a video chat. I'm not sure why. It might just be exactly when I grew up, or it was a big thing getting to answer the phone at my parents' house. That might have something to do with it, but
that is really interesting. Yeah, I think I kind of agree with you. Yeah, it's like yeah, I grew up in the time too where it was somebody called you at home and asked your mom or dad to, can I talk to Matt on the phone, and then it was kind of like I had a phone in my room next to my bed, so I could sit on my bed and talk on the phone, and it does in that way, it does feel a little bit more intimate than just kind of going back to that nostalgia versus like this this modern thing of video chat. So yeah, you may be onto something there.
personally, I don't know why, but I find it seems like it takes a little bit more effort to dial the phone than it does to set up a video chat. Now, that's completely ridiculous when you consider I don't know anybody's phone number at all. So all I do is punch their name in my contact book. It takes exactly the same amount of time. I don't know. It just seems it's probably the nostalgia effect, but
Well, guys, it's right at we've been about a little over 30 minutes. So I guess we'll wrap it up. I think we can keep going, honestly. This has been great. This has been great. It was so great having you, Lisa.
thanks for having me. I've really enjoyed it. You've made my night.
Yeah.
And it is night here now, 7 o'clock. I can
Is
have a
it?
glass of wine. Yeah.
Oh, yes, a glass of wine. Yeah. So, Lisa, tell everyone of our viewers how they can get in contact with you for costing assistance.
Yep. So you can find me on LinkedIn at Lisa Tidswell, or you can find Confident Costing on LinkedIn. Either of those are nice and easy. Confident Costing's easier to spell than Tidswell, most people seem to find. Other than that, I've got a website, which is confidentcosting.com, or you can email me, Lisa at Confident Costing. So if you can spell Confident Costing, you can find me. And I consult, I do training, and if you just want to chat, I mean, I'm happy to chat.
Very cool. Awesome. This has been great. All of our viewers, come and join us on our next talk. We definitely can all relate to working from home. Even if we're in different positions and titles, we can definitely relate. So enjoyed these types of conversations, and looking forward to the next one. All right, guys.
Thanks, Kiara. Thanks, Matt.